Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. It may be good afternoon to you. Welcome, welcome. If you are watching the replay, hello and welcome to you. And as I often say on Thursdays, happy almost Friday because I'm a fan of Friday. Welcome to part 3 of People, Policy, and Profit AI Risk Readiness Playbook or virtual edition. And if you have caught the first two sessions, you know that we have really dived into some really relevant and I think certainly exciting topics surrounding AI, where we are going beyond just kind of the usual and typical conversation. A lot of the conversation I'm hearing and Mandy, perhaps what you've heard, is not necessarily addressing the things that we've been addressing in this session. And so in this session, in part 3, we are going to dive into digital twins and what that really means. Before we get into that, in case you do not know who we are, just a brief introduction. I am Rachel Wilson Thibodeau. I run a brand development and digital strategy consultancy called Swag Strategy Solutions, where swag is not just cool, although I like to think it's a little cool. It's an acronym that stands for Strategic Women Achieve Growth. We work mostly with women-owned businesses, women founders, although not exclusively, guys. We can work with you as well. Small businesses, thought leaders, and really help them in developing, not only developing a brand and not only building a brand. Again, that's one of those things we hear a lot. It's kind of a sound bite, but help clients in really establishing brand equity, which is the value of the brand and brand sustainability, using digital strategies, certainly AI powered strategies to do that. I'm also an award-winning speaker and author, and happy to be with you today. Mandy.
So my name is Shamanda Joseph, commonly known as Mandy to most. I am the CEO and founder of Tulip Advisory Professionals, LLC. TULIP is also an acronym which stands for Transforming Unmitigated Liability into Performance. Sometimes I say Transforming Unmitigated Liability, Igniting Performance. We focus on people and contract risks as a way of safeguarding organizational resilience. We also, this is hot off the presses. We are also launching a new technology called Org Safe Instincts. It is a risk intelligence tool to help organizations manage organizational safety, which goes far beyond physical risk these days, given the uncertainty and unpredictability of external environmental factors that don't seem to be easing in any way anytime soon. So we will be doing some demos of our technology within the next 30 days. So I'm super excited about that, and I am super excited about our conversation today and this ongoing series on AI risk readiness, people, policy, and profit. And so, Rachel, should we start to just dig in?
Sure.
Okay, so Rachel, how about you tell folks what exactly is a digital twin?
Good place to start. And let me first say the terms, I want to kind of set the tone because the term digital twin, in some cases, in some scenarios in which it's being used, is kind of a misnomer. I'll get more into that. But just know when I say digital twin, I'm not necessarily referring to a person, like a virtual representation of a person. When I use the term digital avatar or AI avatar, I'm referring to a person. So just know that because I will probably shift between those terms and I don't want there to be confusion. Having said that, we are hearing a lot more and seeing a lot more about digital twins. And often when that term is being used, It's referring to people, just like Mandy and I are speaking to you today. We're in real time, we're going live, but this is really us. We're hearing digital twin being referred to as essentially a digital clone of a person. And that's not really the traditional definition of a digital twin. Digital twin is something that, or digital twin technology is something that is not new, and it's been used for some time, and particularly in manufacturing, use in with production and assembly lines and products and all types of things. And so a digital twin really is a virtual replica of a system, a process, a product. Again, we've seen this used, and I'll talk a bit more about who's using this technology and kind of how they're doing it. Although I will touch on one example, which I was not aware of until somewhat recently. There are cities that have digital twins, like entire cities. I'm in Houston, for example. Houston has a digital twin, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New York City, one that's really kind of become well known. Although you may or may not be aware of this, the city of Singapore has a virtual replica or a digital twin that is, from what I understand, very robust. And so that's why it may be more well known than some others. But a digital twin is essentially very data driven and functional, and tends to be more functional than, say, individual digital, if you're seeing this, I'm doing air quotes, than digital twins or avatars, if you will. A digital avatar or AI avatar is more static and does not really have the functionality. Now, of course, this technology is evolving, and so we could see that change in the next couple of years or so. But as of right now, true digital twins has sensors. They utilize sensors, and that's where how they're capturing the data, which really can turn the physical thing, whatever that is, into a real replica of whatever that thing is. So hopefully that will kind of set the tone and differentiate between a real and actual digital twin and, say, an avatar. Does that make sense, Mandy?
Yeah, I think the big point here is that when we speak in terms of digital twins, we're talking about technology that is truly autonomous. It's self updating, it learns from information that is being fed into it, or that it is itself receiving. It's goal oriented. When you talk about cities using them and manufacturers using these digital twins, which are powered typically by some sort of agentic AI, what's really happening is they are making a replica of whatever the system is in order to look at ways that they can improve upon the system. They're looking for ways to optimize those systems. So it's a digital twin is self-updating from that regard, because it's constantly
Mm-hmm.
feeding data, as you said, data driven, feeding data back to some human who is analyzing this to look at ways that they can improve, continuous improvement, make it better. It's really an internal way of continuous improvement, which is a powerful shift in what we've seen so far in advanced technologies.
Right.
So, talking about these digital twins from a human perspective or people perspective, Rachel, talk about some effective ways to use a digital twin in the form of a person, and then if you would weave into there like some of the mistakes you may have also seen or heard about in the way people are using this very powerful technology to replicate a person.
Well, as I was saying before, we're seeing this a lot more, especially on social media and other parts of the digital space. And this is something being used by a number of people, including executives, CEOs, CFOs, business owners, coaches and consultants, influencers, content creators, like a number of people are utilizing this technology because of a few reasons. Some of it is another way to connect with their audience. If you think about a CEO, for example, a lot of times the target market, whether it's customers, clients, it perhaps even shareholders, have limited access to a CEO. And so using an avatar is certainly another way to provide that access to connect with people. And sometimes this technology is getting so sophisticated that you don't always know when this is AI versus the real person. And so that is certainly one way it's being used. I'm seeing it used in video, talking head videos, like just again, what we're doing right now. This could be something that you could utilize an AI avatar for, and particularly with short form video, seeing a lot of that, seeing it being used in podcasting. Just recently, I was reading, a few weeks ago, I was reading about the CEO of the company Blavity, which is a media company and one that tends to focus on tech and in particular targeting Black professionals and Blacks in tech. And they are having a conference. They have an annual conference, which is actually one of the biggest conferences in tech, and again really focused on the Black community. And the CEO, Morgan DeBond, she is using, more recently I heard it may be a hologram. So that's interesting as well. But she's either going to use a hologram or a digital avatar to appear at the conference, because the conference is going to be in Houston. She's in Tennessee, in Nashville, and she's very pregnant. And so she made the decision, because of course she wants to take part and has things to say. I mean, she's the CEO, and kind of debated on just making a video or utilizing a digital avatar. And so she decided to utilize a digital avatar. Again, now I think they're kind of debating on using a hologram, which is somewhat different. There's similarities, but there's a difference between even a hologram and a digital avatar. Someone asked in the comments, actually, well, why not just make a video? And her response to that was, yeah, I could. We considered that, but this is a tech conference. And it's, it aligns more with what we're doing. And this is a technology that we really want to highlight. And some of the clips that she released, that she's already done, I mean, they are remarkable. And in a lot of cases, it's pretty hard to tell that it's AI versus the real person. Now, that's not the case with all of them, but I would say with most, again, it can be hard to tell whether this is really real versus AI. So it is certainly something that's being used to make more of a connection, to also save time. I mean, a lot of leaders, a lot of people in this space have found that using digital apps is a great way just to take advantage or make the most of their time, rather than them having to show up in real time. And ladies, we tend to like to be made up and look a certain way. And even our guys, you want to look a certain way when you're on camera. You don't really have to deal with that with an avatar. You can let the avatar do the work for you. And depending on your audience, depending on the messaging, it works very well. It can be really effective. Now, having said that, of course, there are concerns or there are flaws. And so, Amanda, you asked about the mistakes. Some mistakes I'm seeing is not having the AI quite as trained, or not mastering the AI tool as much as you really need to be, so that it is more, it appears to be more real. Like, I have come across some videos where it's not just because I've asked myself this and done a little reflection. Well, Rachel, you're kind of in this area, in this space, and you can tell these things anyway. But I've also talked to others who are not as close to this as I am, and they have come to be able to recognize some of the AI content that's out there. And so I think that's problematic, and especially when you're not disclosing that. If you are positioning this content in a way that perhaps you want people to think it's really you. And that's another conversation, which we may get into that a bit more later as well. But if that is the way you're positioning the content and they can see it's not really you, again, depending on your audience, they may not like that. So that can certainly be problematic. And again, which it kind of ties into this, Mandy, you talked about data, or we've talked about data and how important data is to digital twin technology. It's also important to avatar technology because these avatars are created based on our realness, on really who we are, how we speak, the information, the data that you are feeding into that tool. And so if you're not giving it great data, quality data, then that's also going to be problematic. And it's more likely that it will not quite come across as authentic or somewhat authentic, even.
Yeah. So I think, Rachel, what you're hitting on is that, these virtual agents or digital avatars, they can be persuasive, right?
Yeah,
And they are
absolutely.
being designed based on a human's actual persona. And so
Hmm.
if they're out there speaking with authority, representing you, right, in this very persuasive way, then that can create some problems, right? Because
Yeah,
it's being you want it to be an authentic representation of you. So that brings me to the next question is, so do you think by using these digital twins in the form of a person, digital avatar, for example, do you think that that's like a shift away from authenticity? And how concerned should we be about that if it is? Or if it's not, then, kind of why?
right. I Again, I think a lot of it depends on your audience. And this is why I often say it is critical that you know your audience inside and out, your target audience, your ideal or dream client. Because I've found with some people, it's not a problem at all. There are people out there, and certainly people in business and in business leaders who are really embracing AI, including the use of AI avatars. They see it as being a way certainly of increasing efficiency, again, of making those additional touches and connections that they may not really have a chance to do. And so it could be the best thing, or it could be perceived as the best thing since sliced bread. But in other cases, and with some others, not so much. And so as a company, as a business leader, it is really up to you to determine that. And I also think authenticity can be subjective, or how people perceive authenticity, perhaps not authenticity itself, but how it's perceived, I think can be subjective. It can be nuanced because, Mandy, I don't know how you feel about this, but I see people all the time in their real flesh and blood who don't come across as authentic. I think there are narratives being pushed, there's ideas being pushed that's not authentic. I think sometimes the way people show up, and again, I mean, real flesh and blood people, the way they show up is not always in an authentic way. I've seen people online, on social media, and then meet them in person, and they're completely different. I mean, that's always kind of weird because it's like, wait a minute, and I get that people have some people have kind of an alternate ego. I think Beyonce and there's a few others who have said they take on kind of their alter ego when they are performing. I get that, but in some cases it's kind of extreme. It's like you're not the same person, or you don't seem like the same person at all. There is that. And I feel better. I'm more accepting, speaking for myself, more accepting of someone using an avatar, but that avatar is really conveying who they are and what they really believe and what their values are. And as long as those beliefs and values align with mine, I'm okay with that. I think a problem, and I touched on it earlier, is if you really are using this technology and you are positioning it to be you, like that is your goal, for it to appear really as you, but everyone is not buying that, they're not believing that. That's a problem. I think, and this is kind of a subtopic of this larger topic: disclosure. Should you disclose when you are utilizing AI technology? I mean, some of the social media platforms require that, some don't. So it kind of gets into muddy water, but that is certainly something to consider. Do you just disclose and let people know when you are using this technology? But I don't think it has to be a problem necessarily, or a shift necessarily from authenticity. I think it is all in the way it's used. And again, depending on your audience.
So you said a lot and it triggered some thoughts. I think you said some really important things, Rachel, that should be further explored in that. The one thing you said was how people sometimes, you meet them online and they have this online persona, and then you meet them in person and they have this in person persona. And so which one is the avatar, right? Is it your
Mm,
online person, or is it your in person, or is it a
right.
hybrid of the two? And what's interesting is I was scrolling through LinkedIn before we hopped on, and there was a video of a woman, and what drew me in was, she said, "Do not show up at work as your authentic self." And I was like, "Oh, thought, I
Now
thought
that's
that's."
a hook.
I was like, "I thought that's where we were moving to, being our authentic selves in our work
Hmm.
environments." And she went on to explain kind of, some dangers in doing that, which I get, but I think, and I think I'm hearing you kind of lean into this too. I feel like authenticity is important because it goes to the other point you were making, right? About whether or not we're disclosing that we're using these avatars, to represent us in some of our online interactions. And that gets to the point of transparency, right?
Yeah.
And for
Yes.
me, that really goes back to kind of the culture that you are fostering through your use of technology, right? And so transparency,
Hmm.
right? If we can't be honest about whether this is truly us or some digital version of us, then what else might we not be being honest about, right?
Hmm.
So I am, certainly on board with you and about this whole perspective around being authentic and how we leverage this digital technology, particularly in the form of a digital twin that is representative of our human selves. And people also use these digital avatars for like virtual assistants, right? Like we see that in a business context,
Hmm.
where these virtual assistants are scheduling meetings, right? Or scheduling calls. They may also do other tasks like draft legal responses. That
Yeah.
scares me.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Maybe
you know all about that.
And that scares me. A lot of trouble happening for some lawyers there, but also resolving customer complaints. We talked a
Mhm.
lot in our first session about CX and AI. So again, all of that for me comes together full circle when we speak from the authenticity of these things and being transparent about these things. So I want you to now help our audience understand, are there some tools that are better than others when you are specifically looking at creating a digital twin in the form of a person? Let's also be really clear that we're focusing a lot on that as our so-called digital twin and not so much this manufacturing concept from business. So the tools that you might recommend.
Right, right. And before I answer that, something popped in my mind while you were talking, and this is another example that kind of speaks to the authenticity piece in the workplace. Because a friend of mine, we were talking last week, and she's in the job market. She's looking for a job, and she was saying how it has been increasingly frustrating that a lot of the responses she gets when she applies for jobs, kind of the thanks but no thanks responses, they are AI generated. And like she can tell they're AI generated. And she was saying that someone in her network had said that some of the companies he's dealing with from an HR perspective, they're disclosing that. They're letting their candidates know some of this process is AI driven. And so she actually got an email from a different job she had applied for. And she was really excited because that email said, we are actually going to review, a human being is going to review your application and respond to you. And she said she could have jumped for joy because she said that just seems, in this day and age, in this environment, she's not seeing that. And so to have, someone actually say, and of course she was like, okay, let's see if that actually happens. But she said even getting the email and, being told a human being is reviewing this, she said that just made her feel wonderful and was promising. And so I think that says something about kind of the sense of what's going on right now. But shifting gears a bit, I just want to point that out. In terms of the tools, and there are a growing number of tools in this space, I would say the leader, and man, you and I talked a little about this. The leader in the digital avatar or AI avatar space seems to be HeyGen, a company called HeyGen. And I've used HeyGen some. Honestly, I have not even dived as deep into HeyGen as I can because it is proving to be a pretty robust tool. And I believe it is at the forefront of creating these digital avatars and probably also at the forefront of moving the avatar technology closer to the actual digital twin technology. That seems to be their objective. HeyGen and Meta, because Mark Zuckerberg has been talking about this lately as well, which is also a little scary because he's wanting to create, an actual digital twin of people. And so again, keep in mind what I was saying earlier, that involves more than what we're seeing with the avatar, which is typically, speaking, some motion, but does not at all have the same functionality. So I think, yeah, between Meta, HeyGen, there maybe a couple of others out there, they are probably really driving this shift to the actual digital twin technology. But I've been pleased with what I've seen with HeyGen. From what I can tell, though, and even some complaints about HeyGen is in terms of the pricing and what you're looking to do. If you really want to make your avatar again more functional and utilize like special effects and what have you, you could run up against kind of a wall with, hey, again, the technology is developing pretty quickly, so that may not be an issue. But what I've seen some people do, and I've done this as well, is you can also kind of layer some of these tools. You can use tools like ChatGPT, Midjourney, Canva to create images. And I know some of you are thinking, well, I shouldn't have to create an image of me, but that can work as well because there are people who don't really even want to go through getting made up. And because to, again, get it started with data, you do need to like do some videos of the real you. So there are people who don't necessarily even want to do that. And so they start with an image, whether that is of them. Sometimes, of course, if they're creating this for other people, that's another reason you would use some of these other tools to create the image and then layer that with something else, a HeyGen or another couple of tools that I've used several times, Hedra, Kling. These are Kling with a K, Kling. These are tools that give the avatar motion and allows the avatar to speak and really kind of mimic those motions of a real person. Another one I've seen that seems to be really really robust is Higgsfield AI. That is one that can really integrate special effects. And if you want to put yourself or put your avatar in any type of environment, maybe you don't want just a kind of plain backdrop. Maybe you want to put your avatar in the midst of an explosion or in the midst of a beautiful garden or a very uh, interesting event. I mean, all of these things can be done with a tool like Higgsfield. So those are just a few. We're seeing AI tools roll out pretty rapidly. That's been the case pretty much since 2022, certainly 2023. I will say all AI tools and even the AI tools specifically being used for avatars are not all created equally. And so I certainly recommend you do your own research and really find out what these tools do, what's driving the tool to make sure that you're not wasting your time, because I have also come across a few duds. To be careful of that. And also some of these tools kind of duplicate each other. So you don't want to get into a thing, although this can be easy to do, especially if you are exploring different tools and you don't have all of the information you need. You can get into a thing where you are using two or three tools that do the same things. And certainly if you are paying for those tools, I mean, in some cases that may not be a problem depending on your budget. But if it is, and if you're looking to really maximize a tool, just make sure that it's not redundant, that you don't have multiple tools that really do the same thing.
Yeah. And from that perspective, we're talking about creating a digital version of ourselves, right? Maybe that is, and not maybe, but that is probably conducting business, right? In order
Mhm.
to drive some efficiencies, opening up space for us to go and do something else while this digital twin, right, takes care
Mhm.
of some of these business actions that we entrusted with. I think we have to keep that in mind, right? That they could also trigger
Absolutely.
some business consequences, right? Like you're not just allowing it to maybe generate a marketing draft for you or some marketing content for you, right? This is an independent decision substitution, right? On behalf of
Mhm.
you. This is not like generative AI when you are prompting the tool to give you some output. This is a tool that is autonomous and making independent decisions without human approval, right? Because
But some of them are.
That's what we, designed it to do when we're talking about the use of agentic AI in particular for these tools. So we have to always think about the various impacts.
Absolutely. And I want to interject. Speaking of the tools and what can happen with these tools, just recently OpenAI, and some of you may be aware of this. They introduced Sora, which is their tool for images and video. I believe the original Sora focused on images. Now they've released Sora 2. They just released that in like the last month, and it focuses on video. And as wonderful as some believe Sora 2 to be, and there's a lot of raving fans out there. However, everyone is not so happy about it because of some of the content that it's putting out, and that includes some deep fakes. And we've talked a little about that. And so something that has come up recently, and again, this has been in the news, it's kind of been a big story, really kind of two big stories in terms of celebrities or high profile people that we're seeing deep fakes of, essentially. One is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Some of you may or may not have heard his daughter, Bernice King. She was very upset to see some of the videos, and these videos coming out of Sora of her father, and understandably so, because they're deep fakes and they're not presented in a great light. I mean, she certainly considers them disrespectful. I've seen a few that I would consider disrespectful as well. That's one case. Another case is with Robin Williams, the great actor, comedian, his daughter. And it's kind of interesting. Both of their daughters have had to address this. Kind of the same thing, deep fake videos of her father. And this is the part that's unfortunate. This is the part, of AI and this type of technology that's problematic. So I know you're gonna get into that, Mandy, and I'm ready for it because it's like, how do we address and kind of navigate that part of it from a governance perspective, from a privacy perspective, consent? I mean, it
Yeah.
gets into all of that.
So I think, the big question to ask, right, when we talk about a powerful technology like this, right, that is out here really built and designed to act on its own, make decisions on its own, as we've emphasized here. The big question is, can we do this without sacrificing trust, safety, and accountability?
Mm,
Right? Because when you talk about having tools that are, making these decisions on their own, it can be a little dangerous. But then the question becomes, well, who do you hold accountable? In the examples that you gave, right, where these very famous people, there
right.
are these deep fakes out there representing them in a very unfortunate and bad manner, right? Like totally against who they actually were when they were
Mm.
alive on this earth. And it makes it even worse that, these were great men who were no
Talk about
longer
a lack of
with us.
authenticity.
Yeah, and the fact that they did some really great things while they were here and now no longer with us, and to be represented in this way. And the question becomes, well, who's accountable when something like that happens, right? Like, is it the developer?
Right.
Is it the vendor? Is it the business who deployed it? Is it the system owner who approved, for this to be created and put out there? Like, who becomes responsible, right, for this very egregious outcome from the use of this very powerful technology? And I think some of the things that we have to consider, whether it's an individual using a digital avatar, or a small business owner, solopreneur, what have you, or whether it's a large organization using agentic AI more broadly and more deeply, the question is around decision risk, right? Like, where, and we've emphasized this in each of our topics, right? Where do we put the human in the loop, right? Where is the human in the protocols for how these decisions, right, are being made? That's
Right.
one. The other we talk about, and we had some pretty good discussion about this earlier, I think before we went live, was the bias, right? Like constantly evaluating what's happening, what the output is to ensure that there are scenarios for diverse testing, right? Like, I don't care how much we say we're going to eliminate, remove, dismantle DEI, diversity in its simplest meaning, dictionary based meaning means differences. And there are some cultural differences that we have to remain sensitive to avoid and mitigate liability for egregious actions, right? That can become so offensive that it does create liability. And then
Right.
security, right? Like data, the types of data that's being fed into these technologies and the type of data that these technologies can divulge, right? So huge consequences there when we talk about data leaks based on the way these technologies are being trained. And then governance, which goes back to decision risk. Like, how are we governing? Like, what's being put out? What are the appropriate approval systems that these outputs have to travel to before they even, hit public eye or before they even hit usage within the business? And then last, compliance. It's a little slow right now on the regulatory landscape really being, I guess, adequate for
Mm-hmm.
now to prevent some of these risks that we've talked about. At some point it will catch up because there are going to probably be so many lawsuits flying around that at some point we won't be able to have the looseness that we currently have
Mm-hmm.
around the regulation, but that requires even more for self-regulating,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those of us who own or who purchase these technologies, who utilize these technologies, who design these technologies, self regulating and making sure that we have all of the necessary governance, all of the necessary protocols, all of the necessary humans in the loop to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that we are mitigating to the best of our ability any types of liabilities that can be triggered from inappropriate use of this very beneficial technology. I mean, the benefits are huge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's balancing the benefits against the risk to make sure that we are getting optimal use and optimal outcomes.
Yeah, you said a lot there as well, and you brought up something that really makes me wonder who is accountable in the case with, the deep fakes of MLK Jr. It's like, okay, we knew that those videos, or at least some of them, because there's a number of videos, and there were videos floating around of him prior to the whole Sora thing. It just so happens that these some of these more recent videos, they are Sora. You could tell whether the watermark was there or whatever. So people knew, and certainly his daughter, his family knew where this was coming from. In that case, okay, yes. So OpenAI came forward, the CEO, Sam Altman, he has made a statement on this. He has said they are going to pause those particular videos or what have you. But in other cases or similar cases, well, let's look at two scenarios. Another scenario like that where you know where the content is coming from. Is it correct that the company, and I know this may be something that's still evolving, is the company the most accountable? Or what about the content creator who's using that company's tool or technology to create the content? Or are they both equally accountable?
Yeah. So I think that's where the law is going to have to catch up,
Mm,
whether it is the developer or whether it is the person who's designed the content using the developer's tools, whether it's joint liability, as you indicated. I think for now, again, it's the self-regulation that is most important, having ethical guardrails built
mhm,
into these designs, not after deployment, like having it pre-deployment built in.
Mm-hmm.
And then also having escalation triggers. That's very important. Something like the Dr. Martin Luther King thing that was out there, such offensive thing out there, like a kill switch capability, like something that
Mm-hmm.
automatically shuts down something like that when it happens. But again, that's a self-regulatory action that has to be taken until the regulatory landscape and the legal landscape catches up, right? Because right now
Yeah.
technology is just breezing past
Mm-hmm.
any sort of regulatory guardrails. So it's incumbent upon users, developers to ensure that they are staying aligned and in line with best practices for ethical guardrails.
Yeah, this is really fascinating, and I also hear opportunities in both the tech space and the legal community to further develop. I mean, as you say, to kind of catch up with technology, and I think it does really speak to just how quickly technology is moving. I mean, Sam Altman in his comments even said we need to work on more guardrails. We need to explore more guardrails in terms of how this is being used. And on one hand, you hear or you see someone saying that, and it's like, I mean, you guys didn't anticipate things like this. I mean, I I don't know. I don't know if it's just a certain vision and having a perhaps a tunnel vision in how they want to see their tool used or see this technology used, and not accounting for or allowing for it kind of going off the rails and not being used in that way. I mean, all of that is just, it's something to think about, or by developers and those really at the forefront of this technology. We want to see the technology. We've talked about the advantages and the benefits of the technology, but also taking into account the risks and the potential problems.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, you hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of developers out there, trying to get their technology, speed to market, trying to be the first to have their technology on the market.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating because we're out there, you've gotten familiar with a lot of them, right? And you go in and you look and you see which one's the best and which one has the most benefits, biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. And it's fascinating. But you're right. We have to do a better job anticipating how powerful, right, these technologies are, which means
Yeah.
how dangerous they can also be. If not self-regulated with some sort of ethical protocols to kind of reel us back in to responsible AI as the buzzword out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Mandy, I was just checking for some comments, and looks like I may have missed a couple. Let me just see if there are any questions or were any questions. Speaking of technology, sometimes even live stream technology doesn't always work the way it should. Thus, not always seeing the comments. Let's see. Okay, someone was commenting about the authenticity piece and saying that is certainly something to consider. And and I would say, because there's also a question of another example of inauthenticity in like real time. I mean, in addition, I'll answer this quickly as we're kind of running out of time. We want to certainly be cognizant of you all's time. But I would say another example in terms of office inauthenticity, even with, again, real people. And I mentioned this before. There are certain narratives that are presented or ideas that don't come across as authentic, and a number of people don't really see as being authentic. And one being in the coaching and consulting world, the online space, there's this narrative. And I'm not going to blame the book, Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, although I think there is certainly misunderstanding surrounding that book. But I think some people took that and really, really ran with it. And so there is this, this belief or this narrative that you can work 4 hours a week from a beach, your first year in business, your first year in a leadership position, and make a gazillion dollars and be super successful. Like it's this perception that it really doesn't require much. Like it can be super simple to be successful. And that's a narrative, that's a idea that's not necessarily authentic. And that's not just me saying that. I've heard that from a number of people in my network. I've heard that from clients. I've heard that from or seen that from a number of people on social media. And then just how sometimes people present themselves, again, posing in front of luxury cars, mansions, private planes that they don't really own. I mean, these are all examples of inauthenticity that a number of people, many of which may be your customers, your clients, your prospective customers or clients, are kind of fed up with and don't really buy into. And so that's certainly something, or an example, I would say, of problematic authenticity, or not having authenticity in the digital space.
I'm not familiar with that book about working 4 hours a week. But now I'm curious
Oh,
because
that's
there
Mandy,
has
you
to be something more to that. I mean, there has to be something more
there
to.
is more to it. Yes and no. You
I,
you should check it out. It's one of
I will.
those classics, like a business book classic, that it has generated a lot of conversation and
I'm
some
curious.
controversy.
Okay, I'm curious because I 4 hours a week and being super successful and making gazillions of dollars working on the beach.
And that's not necessarily all his premise specifically. The whole, well, to some degree, that is mentioned in the book, but it's really just kind of caught fire, I think, and people really ran with it. Uh-oh. Mandy, are you there? Okay, we may have lost Mandy. Well, you guys, I don't see any other comments or questions at this time, so I'm going to wrap up. I don't know what happened. Again, technology, when it works, it's wonderful. Hopefully this has been valuable to you, and I certainly appreciate you all for joining us. We really don't take anyone's time for granted. That this is a busy time. It's fourth quarter, and so I certainly appreciate you joining us. And I invite you to take note, mark your calendars for the next session. Again, this was part 3. So there is a part 4. Our last session will be on November 6th. These sessions are every other Thursday. So we'll be wrapping up on Thursday, November 6th, also at 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, 12:30 Eastern, and we'll be diving more into that inclusion piece, inclusive intelligence. So we'll be talking about inclusion in the AI era. So if nothing else, I am going to wrap it up, just making sure not missing anything. All right, guys, until next time, I am Rachel Wilson Thibodeau. If you're not already connected, and certainly if you want to find out more about developing your brand, using digital strategies to do that, especially AI powered strategy to go beyond just building a brand to brand equity, brand sustainability, as I like to say, brand breakthrough, then certainly let's connect. You can connect with me here on LinkedIn. You can email me, Rachel@swagstrategy.com. Rachel, Rachel @swagstrategy, SWAGSTRATEGY. All right, take care and take some action.